Well, what's up there guys, Brian here at 3TR and welcome to another one of my movie reviews, and this time I'll be giving you my thoughts on the newest edition in the DC Cinematic Universe, simply titled Aquaman. Now before I jump into my review, if you could, I would really appreciate if you could press one of the links in the description down below so you could follow me on Twitter and friend me on Facebook to keep track of me in my future reviews and other videos. And I can openly say right from the beginning, that despite all the problems and all the criticisms that I've been seeing online towards this film, that I actually had a good time with this film, and I can say that this is without question the best DC Cinematic Universe movie I have seen since Man of Steel came out over 5 years ago. Now, I'm going to go over what I really liked about this film. What I really liked about this film are some of the visuals. This is a absolutely gorgeous movie to look at, and there is so much world building that is done with this film that I think that in terms of a couple other movies that are supposed to be coming out in the near future, I think it's going to be really, really tough in order to try to top the overall visual design of this underwater world. Atlantis has just so much creativity given into it that it just makes you really wonder just how much they could do moving forward. I mean, they really throw absolutely everything. I mean, there are even some aspects of Atlantis that are somewhat technological that I wasn't expecting, despite the fact that in the comic books there are some aspects that are supposed to be magical, and the movie kind of has a difficult time kind of explaining that, but I think for this particular film, I was okay with it. Another thing I also really liked was the action scenes. The action scenes for this film are filmed spectacularly. Now, they do sort of do like a pretty common technique, or I think James Wan kind of uses maybe slightly a bit too much in the terms of these long shots that have the camera kind of moving around the action, and sometimes it goes in like a circle. But there are a couple of other fights throughout the film that are kind of mimicked that have the action moving at such a fast pace that it does bring a certain level of intensity and even, personality that I thought was very, very unique that I hadn't seen in the film before. Another thing that I also really, really liked is something that I've never actually seen before in a comic book movie or in a depiction of a character, and that is Jason Momoa's portrayal as Aquaman. Now, what they did very, very uniquely is that instead of having him try to play a character, they simply added aspects of the Aquaman character that are pretty well known and simply added to Jason Momoa's character, or really his own personality, because he did not feel like a comic book character. He just felt like Jason Momoa, just with some Aquaman powers, and he's such a likable person in real life that every time he's on the screen, you can't help but just have a good feeling about him. Like, this is a person who I would absolutely love to hang out with because he really is just that cool of a person. Another thing that I also really liked is some, not all, but some of the kind of hinting on things to come. Now some people might think that that actually holds the movie back, but I think that in terms of how I feel about the cinematic universe in general, I think that some of those aspects, some of those little teases, I think actually worked. Now, where the movie is seriously flawed is in a number of different departments, but let's go down the list. Number one, I think the movie embraces how ridiculous this whole thing is. I mean, for the longest time, the character of Aquaman and everything around him had been kind of treated as a bit of a joke, and I think that James Wan and the writers openly embrace that ridiculousness. But it can be a bit overwhelming at points, to the point where you're like, you're asking the film to kind of tone it down, but it just pushes things even harder to the point where it gets kind of annoying. Another thing that's also kind of annoying is some of the dialogue. Some of this dialogue is cringeworthy, and it is spread all throughout the film. And I understand there's a way to do cringeworthy dialogue but have emotion. Some of these characters do not have any kind of emotion at all, and it is just annoying. And so I don't know whether to laugh or if I'm supposed to try to take this seriously, because there's definitely a number of moments where someone will say something and it sounds like so ridiculous that my audience I was watching with was openly laughing. Another thing that I think is really, really flawed about this film, now this drove me crazy in the MCU, and the fact that it is again brought here was really upsetting, is how there is little mention at all to the other heroes in this DC Cinematic Universe. I've always hated that when you establish a team movie, despite how horrible Justice League was, you need to come up with a really good excuse as for the scale of the situation that is happening is so big. I can't imagine any of the other heroes that he's met not getting involved, and they are never even mentioned. It's like this movie took place before Justice League happened, or before he was ever introduced, and this movie is supposed to take place a year after Justice League, and I just really hate it when films that are in a cinematic universe do that. It is really annoying. Another thing that is really also poorly handled is some character motivations, and how the movie has a serious, massive pacing problem. Despite the fact this movie is 2.5 hours long, it is moving so fast and they are throwing so many elements that it kind of doesn't give any of these characters real time to breathe. The chemistry between certain characters is also very, very poorly and handled in some cases forced. Another thing that is also very, very ridiculous is how sometimes it can be very, very difficult to see. Now, I openly acknowledge that this movie is gorgeous to look at. I would openly say that this is probably one of the most beautiful world-building movies I've ever seen. But sometimes it can be very damn near difficult to see. And it goes to the common problem that we've had with a lot of these comic book movies, where the third act just kind of divulges into this massive CGI, just crazy fest, where I can't see exactly what's going on. I can kind of tell certain things, or like who's attacking what, or what exactly is going on, but it gets so bloated and so big that it is hard to focus on anything. But despite all of these problems, despite all of the flaws, despite all the things that would seriously plague other films that would probably be the main reason why this movie is going to be so divisive, I had fun with this film. I mean, compared to everything else in terms of the movies that have come out in the cinematic universe that I've had to deal with before, this is a massive step in a good direction. And this is certainly a film that I wouldn't mind seeing again. I'm not sure if I would see this again in theaters, but I will say that if you have an opportunity to see this movie in 3D, because of how beautiful this movie is, I would recommend doing it. But I think that moving forward, I think that there are certain elements that this film gets right that I would really like to see be incorporated in other movies. Now again, this is a seriously heavily flawed movie, and you might not enjoy it as much as I do, but overall, despite all of its flaws, I did end up having fun with this film. And that is something that I can't say I've had with a lot of movies in the past in terms of DC content, because they've been trying to be so strict and so dark and so serious that it's actually kind of a refreshing feeling to go into one of these films and just have fun with its ridiculousness despite its problems. So because of that, if I had to give Aquaman a rating, despite being one of the biggest, most flawed films I've seen all year, I would give this a B-. I had fun with this film, and that is very, very rare for me for a movie that has these many problems. But I would seriously recommend this to anyone who's willing to give this a chance. But again, this is definitely going to divide people, and I really hope that we do see an Aquaman 2, because there is a lot of setup in this film that I think is teased well enough that a sequel would be greatly appreciated. So those are my thoughts on Aquaman. If you've seen this film, share your thoughts. Did you enjoy this movie? If you didn't enjoy this movie, give me your explanations in the comments down below to share with me and everyone else. And always, if you like this video, don't forget to like this video and be sure to share it on your social media outlets. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.